All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Football with Alan Smith. My name is Mohammed Abdul Hamid Alan Smith. That's my name, and yes, welcome to another episode of this podcast. It's been weeks without talking to you guys. Yes, I've been busy, very, very busy with other proceedings, and well, now I finally have some few minutes, and it's only right that I get to speak and enjoy at the time with you guys. It's been the international break. Plenty of games have been going down across various continents, from Africa to Europe to South America to Asia, where the World Cup qualifiers are also ongoing. But yes, good to speak with you guys today, and we'll be focusing on the African side of things, Nigeria to be precise, before we dive into the other nations who actually got themselves bonds. We're talking about qualifiers. Well, we'll start from the Nigerian angle. As a Nigerian, it's only right that we talk about the Super Eagles first. Coming into this international break, there were a lot of talk about the Super Eagles team, especially with the list that was released by the technical crew of the NFF, talking about Extin Guabon alongside his coaches Daniel Ogumodede and Fidel Zilechuku, who have been assisting the man, talking about the technical advisor or the technical director of the NFF, talking about Austin Eguavon. Remember, the Super Eagles still till now don't have a permanent manager. They've been bringing Austin Eguavon, who have been in that role as they continue to look for a permanent manager. But the last few weeks, before the games against Benin Republic and also Rwanda, which we saw the last two games in the last few days, the reports started with the list that was actually released. There were some names there where a lot of people actually criticized some of the names that have been there, and also, uh, as always, it's always something that's always trending when it comes to Nigerian football. Whenever the lists are released, there are usually eyebrows raised by some people, journalists, football fans, and everyone that is involved with Nigerian football. We saw some names on the list. From the defensive list, we saw Gabriel Oshaw, who was invited. I remember this is the second time he has been getting an invite. The second time he has been invited to the Super Eagles of Nigeria. The first was last year. He couldn't honor the call up because he picked up an injury, so couldn't honor the call up. But this time around, he was still playing for Luton Town. We know Luton Town got relegated and made a move from England to go to France, to Auxerre, where he had been playing right there in the French Ligue 1. Gabriel Oshaw, good addition. A lot of people saw him last season with Luton Town, one of the few bright spots in that poor Luton Town team that got relegated back to the English Championship last season. So he was one of the few bright spots in the team. I'm not surprised when he got the move to the French Ligue 1. But there's one name in that defensive line that got a lot of people talking. It was Victor Collins. This is a player that plays for Nasarawa United in the NPFL. I was actually at the stadium where talking about the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja when that list dropped, and immediately questions and eyebrows were raised. Fans and colleagues of mine who were journalists who were at the stadium, then we were actually covering the Super Eagles B team. They were talking about the home base Super Eagles team, talking about the Nigerian team who are currently preparing for a double header qualifiers for the Chan Nations Cup that will be held later next year. So Victor Collins, a week before the list was released, that was last week, was in Abuja here with the home base team, because the technical team of Austin Eguavon of the NFF as well invited about 33 players the previous week to come train as they prepare for the double header against Ghana. Victor Collins was part of that team. He trained that week, all through that week, because he trained from Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, before they all left and returned back to the club to honor their club's fixture. I covered that training. I was there all through that week in which they trained, because it's close to mine here. The week after, fresh set of players were now invited to the team to also train as they prepare their final list of players who are going to be executing those two games against Ghana. Like I said, Victor Collins was in camp the previous week. In that training session the previous week, some good players stood out. Ifeanyi Onyebuchi had a very good week with the team. He plays for Enugu Rangers. I also saw players like Mohamed Zikifiliu, who plays for Kano Pillars. Innocent Godwin, another good defender who plays for Abia Warriors. So some very good MPFA players were actually part of that first week of training. The second week of training saw some new additions and one or two players from the previous week, but there was no Victor Collins. It was on Wednesday when they were training at the Moshood Abiola Stadium that same evening at about 5 to 6 p.m. The Super Eagles main list, that is the senior men national team of Nigeria, the list dropped. That's the 18, the list dropped. And Victor Collins' name was there. I mean, like I said, I was there at that stadium. Austin Eguavon was not part of that training session because that week he was away. According to report, he was away. So the training session was handled by Daniel Ogumodede of Remo Stars, Fidelis Ilechukwu of Enugu Rangers, and Abidin Barua, the goalkeeping coach. Daniel Ogumodede had to answer questions about the inclusion of Victor Collins of Nasarawa United. And the coach confirmed that they've seen him play. The main head coach, talking about Austin Eguavon, have seen him play. And also, they believe he's one of, if not the best left-footed centre-back we have in the NPFL. Though, when you consider or when you look at the NPFL table right about now, Nasarawa United are currently sat 19th on the log. They are having a shocking season, a poor season. Remember, they just got promoted from the NNL to the NPFL. So it's not as if Nasarawa United were there last season. They were playing in the NNL last season. They got promoted. And after match day 12, when you look at the NPFL table, Nasarawa United are currently 19th. They are leaking goals. They are not scoring enough goals. They are not racking enough points. But they have a player who have just made the senior men's national team. Talking about the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Daniel Ogumodede confirmed that they believe that Victor Collins was, if not the best left-footed centre-back they have in the country right about now, and that was why he was selected. It's because he is one of the few bright spots in the Nasarawa United team who have struggled so far this season. So that was why he was invited. Austin Eguavon has watched him and they've seen him the previous week in training and they concluded that he's good enough for the senior men's national team. Let's move to the next one. After that list dropped that same day, another name, two names. A lot of people at that stadium that same Thursday evening was Sadiq Umar. Sadiq Umar, who have struggled so far this season. In short, struggled right from last season till now. He is not a regular stepper for Real Sociedad in the Spanish La Liga, but gets an invite to the men's national team. That even on social media, fans were criticizing Sadiq, but the man even responded with a post of him with a reply. I don't know. He was mocking people that were actually trolling the NFL for inviting him to the national team. Sadiq Umar have always been known in the national team. Some persons have always criticized his addition to the national team. Some people have said it is quarter system. Some have said he's not good enough. Some have said with the other caliber of players we have, the strikers we have in Europe, Sedik Umar shouldn't be getting a call up to the national team. But we are not the NFF. Sedik Umar got called up. When you consider other players who have scored more goals or who are banging in the goals for their respective clubs so far this season in European top competitions, whereas here we have a player who barely plays, not to even talk of score, getting a call up to the national team. Tolu Orokodare, who plays for Ghent in Belgium, who plays for Genk, I beg your pardon, Genk. There's a difference between Ghent and Genk. Genk is currently the highest goal scorer in the Belgian Jupiler Pro League. There is Chuba Akpom, who have also started the season very well with Ajax in the Eredivisie. Another name worthy mention is Siri Dessus of Rangers, who have also scored about 7 to 8 goals for Rangers in all competition this season, both in the Scottish Premiership and also in the Europa League where Rangers, I beg your pardon, Rangers are currently playing. So it was quite a shock to see the name of Sedik Umar and Kelechi Iheanacho, another player who has struggled since his move from Leicester City to Sevilla this season. Iheanacho barely starts these days. Yes, when he joined Sevilla, he was the starter. He was playing as their number 9, but he barely starts. He has struggled for Sevilla, a Sevilla team who in general have been a shadow of themselves right from last season till now. So it was quite surprising to see Kelechi Iheanacho and Sedik Umar both invited. But the coach Ogumodede once again confirmed that Sedik was invited because he's there. He has been there with the team all this while. The reason why they haven't invited him in previous call was because of his injury. Injury. Let's leave that. Let's come to the games proper. Where Nigeria failed to win a single game in the 2 international games they played during this window. First against former Super Eagles manager Gene Raw, managing Benin Republic these days. In the World Cup qualifiers against Benin Republic, Nigeria lost that game 2-0 to Benin Republic. When we met, I think it was in June or so, or September, if I am not mistaken right now, in the African Cup of Nations qualifiers, Nigeria defeated them by 3-0. So in the last 12 months, we've played against them 3 times. The then in Abidjan was the 3rd time in the African Cup of Nations qualifiers. Yet again, Nigeria failed to win. A game where they didn't play up to their best. They were not really sharp. They didn't look like the Super Eagles team that we saw in Abidjan 12 months ago, or less than 12 months ago, playing at the Nations Cup. Disappointing performance, but they still ended up picking up a point. Victor Osimhen picking up a header. So far so good, he has scored 23 goals for the Nigerian national team, the second highest goal scorer, the second all-time highest goal scorer behind the late Rashidi Yekini, who scored 37. So big shout out to Victor. Has been, whenever he's called upon, he always deliver for the national team. But yet, we left to the 1-1 draw. But when you consider that during this Cup of Nations qualifiers, Nigeria did not win, that was our final away game. We didn't win a single game away from home. No single win away from home. Remember, the World Cup qualifiers will be next year in March. And as it stands, Nigeria needs to win all of the 4 games left for her if they want to be at the World Cup in 2026. But we fail to win a single away game in any of our 3 African Cup of Nations qualifiers away from home that we played so far. Disappointing one, but a lot of people were now saying, okay, before that game, before that game, Nigeria had already qualified. They had already qualified. So there was no need or no cause for alarm. Qualification was already sealed. The players were relaxed. There was no need to, yes, start worrying or overworking themselves, considering that the season is long and most of them want to avoid any form of injuries. Understandable. Then came the game in Uyo only yesterday evening against Rwanda. Nigeria have been unbeaten. Before the game against Benin Republic, we had not conceded a single goal. We've kept clean sheets. But yesterday, when we took on Rwanda, one of the this one of the poorest performance, I will equate it as one of the poorest performance I have seen from the Super Eagles in recent times. Disjointed. Yes, the manager Austin Eguavoen made 8 changes, but when you consider the players that were also brought in, these guys are not bad players. These guys are good players. You see them play for their club week in, week out. Was it Boniface? Was it Alhassan Yusuf, who plays for New York Revolution these days, New England Revolution in the MLS? Or is it Arthur Oyindika, Bright Osai Samuel, who plays for the Fenerbahce? All of those guys are good players. So it was actually shocking to see the kind of performance they put in last night against Rwanda. Though we still ended up talking about the team, Samuel Chukwueze still ended up producing a moment of magic to put us in front, but ended up losing that lead. Yet again, set piece. Nigeria and set piece. Then you ask the questions. Is it that the managers or the technical team or the technical department of the NFF don't analyze games after this? Don't usually analyze these games because we keep conceding the same kind of goals every time. Set piece. Don't they? I mean, don't they hold seminars with these players when they come back to play for the team? What do they do on the training ground to try to curb opponents from getting or scoring against us whenever they get set piece chances? There is a lot of work to be done with this Super Eagles team. A lot of work to be done. We were runner ups at the Nations Cup, but you could see there were flaws in that team that were papered by the defensive manner at which Jose Peseiro approached most of the games at the Nations Cup. So there is still work to be done in this team. Our next games are going to be against the likes of Rwanda, Zimbabwe, and co. when the World Cup qualifiers comes back later in March in 2025. But yet again, some players have been disappointing whenever they've been given the chance with the Super Eagles. The management, it all boils down to the management. Giving players who are not worthy of shirts or playing time and neglecting the ones who actually have to be called in or provided their own fair share of chance. Let's not even forget Josh Maja as well. He's another player who is doing very well in the championship. Yes, he has been hot and cold. But when you look at the log of players who have scored some of the most goals in the English championship, Josh Maja is all there. So it begs to answer, what is it the NFF are doing when it comes to inviting players? We normally say players should be invited because they are on form, because they are playing regularly for their club, because they are actually scoring goals, putting in defensive sheet, and actually have the potential to actually stake a claim in the starting 11 or even on the bench. The NFF needs to answer a lot of questions. Then it begs to answer the question or the conundrum of Victor Boniface. Victor Boniface, last season till now, has been on fire for Bayern Leverkusen, right there in the Bundesliga. His combination with Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong, and Alex Grimado have seen Leverkusen become one of the powerhouses yet again, in not just in Germany, but in European football. Yes, we've seen players over the years that are normally shown for their club side, but when they come to the national team, they look a shadow of themselves. It's sad that Victor Boniface, a player with plenty potential, has now fell into that category of players who can produce for the national team. It's 11 games for Victor, and he has still yet to score a goal for the senior men's national team of Nigeria, the Super Eagles. His performance are not good enough. It's disappointing what we've seen from Boniface, but the lad is a strong lad. I think he will bounce back. And I'm also not putting all of the blame in him, because I think our system or our offensive side of things is usually not the best. We have players who always want to dribble, talking about the wingers, and barely put in crosses. Apart from Moses Simon, our wingers or even our fullbacks don't usually put those crosses in like you would expect or like a center forward would want. Runs in behind, from the playmaking point of view, the passes are not forthcoming. This is not me making excuses for Victor Boniface. I think he still need to sit up, need to do better, because the coaches have persisted with him over time, but yet he's still not delivering. I also believe it's time to give other players a chance, a fair chance. Josh Maja, Chuba Akpom, all of these guys actually deserve a chance, and that is what we've been asking for over the last few months and weeks, or whenever the Super Eagles list comes around. There is always a controversial name who gets to make that list. So as it is right now, if Nigeria wants to be at the World Cup, a lot of things need to change, from the players' mentality at approaching games, because yesterday you could see that these guys were not interested. They were just there just to honor formalities. You have to have the mentality that every game, whether you are won or whether you've qualified or not, have to be approached with utmost seriousness, with no sense of complacency. Morocco are the host of the Nations Cup. They played their 6 matches and won all of it. 6 or 7 matches, or even 8 matches. They won all of their matches and scored over 26 goals. These are the teams that are going to be hosting the Nations Cup, but they are involved in the qualifiers. But they still make sure that with every game they play, they approach the game with a competitive mindset. One thing about I have known over the years of following the Super Eagles and covering Nigerian football is that it is usually games where you don't expect us, or where the Super Eagles are underdogs. Those are the kind of games the Super Eagles win. There is this sense of complacency within the fans that have also rubbed on the players, that when games are not really that important, these players don't put in maximum effort. These need to change if Nigeria wants to get back as a powerhouse in African football, and also be recognized once again globally. We might be missing out on the World Cup. Am I confident of us winning all 4 games next year? They say football, nothing is impossible. But if you ask me, am I confident after what I've seen in the last 2 games? Though 2025 is still very far ahead of us, but I don't have any confidence right about now of us winning all 4 games against Rwanda, Benin Republic, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. I barely have any kind of hope right now. But who knows? 2025, like I said, is far away. Things might still change between now and then. But the technical crew as well. The NFF need to find a way to sort it out once and for all, permanently. They've been talk. Remember when Finidi George was fired, or when he left his role? Let's put it that way. They said they were going to get a foreign expatriate. It is November. Finidi left the role in June. Still no permanent manager, and we have those World Cup qualifiers coming up. They need to find a way to get a manager, a permanent manager, make that team stable, provide or prove or provide that stability. We should know who is our permanent manager. Is it going to be Austin Egbabon full time, or you are getting the foreign expatriate you told us back in June, July? So all of these questions need to be answered. Player mentality needs to change. The coaching department, for me, not good enough. The NFF, when it comes to picking the players, some names which I think are exempted from the list deserve a fair chance as well. So this is my own take on what is happening with Nigerian football and the just recently concluded window for the Nigerian national teams. We need to do better. Fans are expecting a lot from this team. Failing to qualify for the 2026 World Cup in America, Mexico, and Canada will be an absolute disaster. We failed to qualify to Qatar, losing that ticket to one of the worst Ghanaian side I've seen in history. I'll come to Ghana very soon. But the Super Eagles needs to be at the World Cup in 2026. Back to back, missing out on a ticket for the World Cup will be an absolutely shambles. It will be a disaster. Something which people need to pay. People in position of power in the glass house, in the footballing cycle of Nigeria need to pay. They can't afford to miss out on that World Cup. Let's leave Nigeria. Let's go to Ghana. When we lost the ticket to Ghana back in 2021 for the World Cup in Qatar in 2022, I remember I was on a Twitter space and I said this was the worst Ghanaian side I have seen in recent history. The Ghanaian side that was assembled just all for those two games of Nigeria. From the coaching department, Otto Addo was brought in from Dortmund. They brought in George Boateng. They also brought in one or two of their ex-international to assist Otto Addo for those games. Otto Addo coming from Borussia Dortmund youth team to manage Ghana against Nigeria. With the caliber of players we had, seeing how we played in that game, it was quite disappointing over two legs that Ghana were able to pick a ticket ahead of Nigeria for that World Cup. Period to those two games for those World Cup qualifiers, Ghana failed or were knocked out in the group stages of the African Cup of Nations that same 2021. Going into that game, I was quite confident that this was going to be our ticket. Never saw Ghana as a threat. Seeing the players they portray, they assembled against the team Nigeria assembled. So it was quite disappointing, heartbreaking. I still remember that day, still very clear, where I was doing, what I was doing, how I saw that game, and how I returned back from the stadium for that game. One of the worst nights as a football fan, as a Nigerian football fan. We had no business losing to Ghana that ticket. So when I said that in the Twitter space, some veteran journalist was like, do you know who Ghana are? Do you know the rivalry between Ghana, Nigeria, and Ghana? All of these things. Kept on blabbing. Kept on saying all of those things. In my mind, I was like, nah, you keep making excuses. I know it's the derby, it's a rivalry, but you also have to consider that this is the worst Ghanaian side in recent history. And I have been proved 2 years later, I've been proved right yet again. The last Nations Cup in 2024 in Ivory Coast, Ghana yet again were knocked out in the group stages. And now, in the World Cup qualifiers, they've been quite decent there. But in the Nations Cup qualifiers, Ghana will not be at the Nations Cup in 2025. They will not be at the Nations Cup in 2025. They failed to win a single of their game in the African Cup of Nations qualifiers. A disaster of a qualifying campaign. People in Ghana have said the FA chairman and his board need to leave because this is like the darkest times in Ghanaian football. From players being booed whenever they are with the board to managers facing or in confrontations with journalists. This year it has never been this bad with Ghanaian football. They won't be at the Nations Cup for the first time since 2004. This is history being wiped away. It's actually sad what African football administrators do to our football, from the pitches to the money that's actually getting from FIFA. How do they spend this money? The stadiums are most times not usually ready to host international games. It was just few months ago we were hearing talk that the Ghanaian stadium might not be approved. Though yes, it was approved, they might be coming to Nigeria to play their own World Cup qualifiers, or Togo or Ivory Coast or wherever. Whereas there are big chunk of cash that usually comes in. When they qualified for the World Cup, played at the World Cup, there is a compensation, a fee that comes from FIFA. What do they do with those funds? What did they do with those funds? In bettering the facilities, putting one or two things in place that need to be put in place, but nothing has been done and nobody is paying for it. We are seeing it in South Africa. Yes, I am not going to, I just criticize all of the African football administrators. In South Africa, we are seeing Danny Jordan appearing in court to answer for all of the allegations that have been laid in front of him. In Nigeria, in Ghana, none of these things will happen. People commit crime and go scot-free. People do things they are not supposed to do, but because of their power, position, and influence, they go scot-free. Ghana are in one of their darkest times as a footballing nation. The five-time African Cup of Nations champions will not be at the Nations Cup in 2025. A team that have potential African Player of the Year, Mohamed Kudus, Thomas Partey, Anthony Semenyo, players like Gideon Mensah, all of these guys, and yet will not or are missing out on an African Cup of Nations ticket is unforgivable. I hope the Ghanaian people are able to, rally around and do what needs to be done in asking questions from their football administrators. The same thing is what I am expecting from the Nigerian football fans as well, or the football circle, to also ask questions if we fail to qualify for yet another World Cup. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'll wrap up another episode of Football with Alan Smith. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys again very soon. Thank you guys and enjoy the rest of the day.